All right, guys, we are here with BJ. Is it Heningburg?
Heningburg.
Yes. And we're here with Matt Fuzzy Jackson from professional paintball team AC Dallas. We're going to give each of them a few questions today, and that way you guys get a little insight on what a professional paintball player goes through, his experiences and his thoughts. So first, we're going to start out with Matt, or Fuzzy as most people know him. So the first question I have for you. You are a very passionate and like fire burning inside type of player when you're on the field. What advice would you give to players who might let their passion or adrenaline on the field affect how they play and their level of play?
Anyone that knows me or played with me knows that I get heated a little bit with refs and sometimes teammates, sometimes people that we play against. Biggest thing I would say is don't let it get to a point where a ref is going to call you on something, right? I think I've gotten maybe one or two minors over the years of talking after I'm dead, something like that. So there's definitely a line, right? You can go a little bit too overboard and get penalties, and then your team's going to be mad at you, which is definitely not what you want, right? But the biggest thing I'd say on that is just you have to just control yourself, right? Like, that's all it is. It's you versus the world, it's you versus the ref, whatever it may be. But as far as advice on that, practice it at practice. If you get frustrated at practice not saying something when normally you would. John and I talk about this over the years. There's a lot of times where I'd want to run up and critique somebody or run up and yell at someone because they made a mistake, but you do that 2 times out of the 5 instead of the 4 times out of 5. Over time, you're just going to know how to control it a little bit better.
So what about players that like we have a buddy, David Lum, you know what I mean? And so like some people, like they get so hyped when they're playing that their adrenaline literally takes over, and they could have walked backwards 10 steps, but they're exhausted from it. Any experience, like you seem to be a very calm player, any techniques or any mindset that you think players would go into that could help them calm down before they play or after a point?
Yeah, a lot of times, like the biggest thing with that is a lot of front guys that are going to be running real far off break. Very rarely is the field layout going to be where you're running and sprinting like, you know, the whole game you're playing. Most of the time, you run and you sprint and you make your spot. Take some deep breaths once you get there, right? Literally, like, control your breathing. In, out. I know it sounds kind of silly, but that's literally what the example John just gave. It was an old teammate of ours, and the snake was like basically where like a snake insert would normally be. The snake was super, super long, and he would go there almost every game because you can make it, but be exhausted. And most of the time, he was like go there and look inside, and it wasn't really anything that was strenuous activity, but he would be super winded after those games. And we basically asked him, we told him like, hey, get there, you know, count to 3. Take some deep breaths, and then start playing the game, because what he was doing off break really wasn't, you know, pivotal to the whole game.
BJ, you play as a front spot. I mean, do you have any advice to like a snake guy?
Yeah, sometimes that's kind of hard. Depending on when you're running and you're diving into the snake and you see some kills on your side of the field, you naturally just want to continue to go. So it's hard to try to slow that down sometimes. But Fuzz is right. It is nice to get in there and take a deep breath and just count to 3. It's really not a lot of time, so you can do it. But as a front player, it seems like you have like nerves.
Yeah, that's absolutely.
Going. Everything's real high, heart rate's pumping.
Exactly,
you know,
exactly.
Everybody's relying on you, but.
All right, cool deal. So hopefully that helps you guys. If you're a front player, you kind of get anxious before, you know, you've got like the yell and scream like some of us do. Hopefully that'll help you out. All right, second question for Fuzz. In the beginner division, let's say anything lower than Division 2, what do you think is the most important skill an individual player should work on, and what is the most important skill a team should work on? So we can do one at a time. So as an individual.
Individual would be really being accurate. You know, it sounds kind of silly maybe to a lot of people, but literally being able to hit what you're pointing your barrel at, being able to pick your gun up, shoot at a target, and to hit that target. Obviously, there's going to be paint issues that you have if the paint doesn't shoot straight, but generally speaking, your paint that you're going to be practicing with is going to be pretty straight, right? And think of it as like, be realistic with the target. You're not going to shoot, you know, a quarter from 30 yards, right? Be realistic. You're going to shoot a chest from 30 yards, 40 yards. That's kind of the accuracy that we're talking about. You know, use a pair of goggles as reference. If you can hit those targets as an individual, if you see people, you should be able to shoot people.
So
right?
just accuracy in general, left-handed, right-handed.
Like right-handed, left-handed, no question. Obviously, some of the beginner divisions are not going to be as good with their offhand, and that's something that I would recommend actively trying to pursue and actively try to get better at. But realistically, start off with one and then work on the other, right? Be amazing with your right hand and then get good with your left, right? One handle should always be lacking a little bit.
Okay. And then as a team, what do you think something that, like, for teamwork or whatnot, what is one thing that you would focus on, like, let's say the divisional teams, to really focus on as a team?
The team stuff, probably the easiest way to break it down is to being able to work in a pair, right? Like BJ and I are trying to play the snake side so most of the time together. Being able to be together with your guy in front of you down a side of a field, it's easier than looking at the whole game as a team, right? You have kind of these mini games going on in a 5-on-5, so pick the guy that's you're behind or pick the guy that's behind you and try to have that camaraderie, have that communication, but just look at it as simple enough, working together, what you need him to do to help you go and shoot people kind of deal. I think that's like a good starting point of working on a team basic, team concept of paintball.
Okay. And BJ, as far as individual skill, is there something that you would say that may be different than what Fuzz says, an individual skill for players to work on?
Yeah, timing. Timing is the most best skill a player can have, and honestly, I don't know how to tell people how to increase their timing ability when making decisions when it's time to play fast on the snake side or play slow. There's a lot of good players in the league that I see. Alex Goldman, I watch him a lot, and he has good timing. It always seems like he makes the right decision every single time. That's something that you just have to really watch a lot of players and see why they made a decision to slow down or go fast.
So timing mid-game, mid-point, as far as like when to make moves or when to not make moves, right? To play defensive versus attack. That's super smart. I didn't expect that. Yeah, that's awesome. Oh yeah, okay, all right. And then last question here for you, Fuzz. You are known for being just a ridiculously good snapshot on the field and clutch player. Can you give us some insight on how you became the player you are today?
I break it up into two parts. The idea on like the good snap shooting, I think that's kind of goes back to the being accurate. Joking across the league, people joke all the time. They don't want to shoot at me because I just shoot straight. It sounds kind of funny. We're all shooting the same guns, all kind of shooting the same paint in a sense. But I feel like generally, if I point my barrel at something, I'm going to hit it. I think that helps a lot with the snap shooting. And being comfortable with your setup and trying to stay with the same setup for a long, extended period of time, you get comfortable with what you're using. I always joke and use football references. Think of the idea of NFL quarterbacks, how many times they've made the same throw. They've thrown a football over 5,000 times or something like that. That football's not changing. Yep. Think of that football as your paintball gun, right? If you have the same gun, it's going to feel the same. You hold it the same. You're going to get into it's muscle memory, right? You're not relearning or retraining, right? You're just pointing and shooting.
So the players out there that have 7 different setups and play with a different setup every day, you're saying, look, at least to get started, maybe when you're doing your drills and your tournament, maybe shoot the same thing.
More than likely on those guys, they're going to have one that they like the most, right? Or they're going to have one that they play better with. Generally, it's going to be, that specific setup fits them, fits their arm. That's the way I look at it. Some people are different. Some people can switch guns and things like that. But I think when you get to a top tier level, literally professional level, I think that's part of it, is literally being able to use the same thing and control it really well.
Awesome.
You're good.
All right, cool deal. So I appreciate BJ, I appreciate Fuzz. Make sure you guys check back next week. We're gonna have a little more, 3 more questions focused mainly on for BJ, and have Fuzz give a little insight. Thank you guys for watching.